So this is another one of my freeform videos. Um, just wanted to address a few topics. So there's something that happens a lot where uninformed journalists will misrepresent a concept, and after they misrepresent it and their journalism becomes popular, then a lot of people misunderstand that concept and turn it into something else, and it just metastasizes into a bunch of crazy, insane sounding bull. Um, and that's been happening a lot because people aren't going back to read the actual research. They're not looking at what the word actually means. They just start forming their opinions about it that are based on their assumptions and delusions, and they just sit in a filter bubble recycling their uninformed opinions. And one of the areas that's happening a lot recently is the concept of empathy. So empathy has a few different forms. You can look them up. Please do. There's what's called cognitive empathy, where you're able to identify what emotion someone is feeling. You can look at someone and say, ah, they're angry. Oh, they're sad. That's cognitive empathy. And that's used by con artists, psychopaths, manipulators to understand how to play with people. That's not empathy. When people were referring to empathy originally, oh shit. When people were referring to empathy originally, they were talking about affective empathy. AFFECTIVE. Affective empathy is if someone else is feeling an emotion, I feel that emotion in my own body with them. So if someone else is expressing regret for something that they did, I feel that regret. I know what regret feels like. I felt it too. We've all felt the whole spectrum of emotions. You know what it feels like. When someone else is angry, I feel their anger with them. That's affective empathy. And that's the real empathy. Affective empathy, clinically, is beyond the reach of a psychopath. Someone who has a dysfunction in their mirror neuron regions, which we can detect with an EEG scan, is unable to do affective empathy. It's forever beyond them. So affective empathy is when you feel other people's emotions alongside with them. If I see someone get hurt, I'm clenching the same part of my body instinctively that they hurt, as if their pain happened to me. So affective empathy is something that we see in tribal societies. It's something that we see in people who choose to be heroic. When someone's a hero, it's because they feel the pain that other people are going through, and they're motivated by that relatedness. They're feeling it with you, and that's why it's so important to them. Affective empathy does not diminish your sense of self. It does not diminish the amount of pleasure or value you see for your own body. It's not that I value delicious flavors or beautiful music less. I still have the same amount of value for those things that you all do. And the emotions that I feel relating to others is bigger. It's a giant. And that's where heroism comes from. People are willing to make self-sacrifices. They're not required. They choose to. It's a willful choice to make sacrifices for the people you care about. So affective empathy is usually misrepresented and maligned by people who never read the research. They don't know what the word actually means. And fundamentally, they don't empathize. And what they did was they regurgitated within their filter bubble a series of assumptions that they learned from a misrepresentation by some journalist. So what people have been saying for a few years now that empathy is that empathy is when you want to be a people pleaser. When you're nervous about upsetting other people and so you just obey them and you can't say no. That has never been empathy. That's not empathy. The people who say that never read the research. They never understood what the word actually meant. If someone is a people pleaser who's afraid of upsetting people and so they can't say no, what that's called is an agreeable neurotic, and they demonstrate submissive traits. An agreeable neurotic with submissive traits is afraid of other people being upset at them. And to protect themselves from other people's judgment and harassment, to protect themselves from social exclusion, they obey. That's an agreeable neurotic with submissive traits. Neuroticism means you just fall into a worry loop. There's different forms of neuroticism depending on which kind of worry you're expressing. Agreeableness means you don't want to say anything that other people disagree with. You don't want to say no. None of those come from empathy. And what we see specifically amongst agreeable neurotics is they don't empathize. They're not actually feeling the emotion that the other person is feeling. They're just nervous that someone might be angry at them. And so they obey. Empaths are not feeling emotions and then compelled beyond their own free will. Empaths don't lose free will. We don't lose identity. I feel what other people feel because I relate to their identity with my own. And my empathy is an expansion of self. It's not a loss of self. So an empath will choose to be heroic. They'll see other people suffering and say, I want to help them. An agreeable neurotic says, this angry person is telling me to obey them and I don't want to upset them, so I'll just obey. And that behavior of obeying the angry person is called appeasement. This is specifically a maladaptive service of abusers. So an agreeable neurotic with submissive traits consistently obeys abusers. People who are loving and compassionate and virtuous and generous, they're not trying to get you to obey. They don't want you to obey them. So if you're always just obeying people, then you can be sure that you are only obeying evil people, because only evil people want you to obey. And that's appeasement. So in the Nuremberg trials, the people who were actually flipping the switch on the chambers, the people who were actually doing the harm to others, they were shown photos of all their victims. If they were an empath, seeing the photos of all their victims, they would have empathized with those victims. They would have been in tears saying, I robbed them of their lives. I was the cause of their harm. Everything they could have been in their life, every choice they could have made, every joy they could have had, all the connection and belonging, what they could have been for the lives of others, I cut that short. That's what someone says when they're empathic. They didn't do that. When the Nuremberg trial prison guards were shown the photos of their own victims, they proved that they're agreeable neurotics. Because they said, you can't blame me. I was just following orders. The angry man told me to obey, so I obeyed. And I harmed other people, but that's not my fault, because I was just obeying the evil person. If you choose to obey evil, that's evil. That's not heroic. So an empath chooses to be heroic because they in themselves feel compassion for the people who suffer, the victims. An agreeable neurotic consistently obeys evil because they're just looking for who to obey, to stay safe and avoid judgment and shame and ostracization. They are actually completely opposite. And here's the other thing. Those Nuremberg trial folks who showed no empathy, and they were agreeable neurotics, obeying evil. When their neighbors were asked about their own character and personality, these people in the Nuremberg trials, the neighbors said, I don't understand how they could be so horrible to other human beings, because they're always so nice and polite, and they never say no. And that's exactly what we see amongst agreeable neurotics with submissive traits. Agreeable neurotics with submissive traits are always perfectly polite because they don't want to upset anyone. They don't want to do anything that could lead to negative judgment of themselves. The people who are most polite are the ones who empathize the least. They're only concerned about their self-preservation and the image that they present to others. They want everyone to like them. They don't want anyone to be able to criticize them. Heroic people aren't like that. Heroes will step out of convention. They'll operate in a way that everyone hates or dismisses. And they don't care, because what they feel is the suffering of the victims. Heroes will step out of the bounds of society because they care more about the victim's experience than social approval. So the agreeable neurotic is all the way over on one side, and the empath is all the way on the other. And we see that when people are highly empathic, they will stand up against evil, even in the face of criticism. And they will shout loud, which isn't polite. So the more empathic someone is, the more impassioned they are toward virtue. And that upsets other people because they're not being polite. So when people tell you, oh, empaths are always people pleasers, no, that's actually the opposite. It's the opposite. The people pleasers are the agreeable neurotics who are submissive, and they want everyone to like them, so they never say no, and they're always very polite. And the empaths are the ones who feel in their own chest how much the victims are suffering. And that's what is able to motivate them beyond their own needs and desires, beyond their personal self-interest, to take risks and make sacrifices to help the wider world. And then we have another misrepresentation in the common dialogue. People in their filter bubble still want to tell themselves that they're always right without looking at any of the research, without learning what words mean. They claim that if you're empathic, you're going to self-destruct. That somehow feeling other people's emotions inside you causes you against your will, beyond your own free will. You're somehow forced to sacrifice yourself to the extent that you destroy yourself. That's not true. If someone is making sacrifices to the point that they burn out, or they are overwhelmed, or they lead to their own martyrdom, that's not a product of empathy. That's called a martyrdom syndrome. It's part of savior complex. So the people who whip themselves and go through all the tortures to then say, look at how tortured I am, that must make me good. That's not empathy. They want to suffer to claim superiority. That by suffering, they must be superior. And that's a joke. That's fake. That's virtue signaling. So if someone is saying, I work so many hours, I've worked so hard, that means I'm a better person. No, it's not. They should be working smarter. They should be delegating. They should be collaborating. They should make sure that they get enough of what they need to keep going, because burning out means you get less done in the end. So there's a huge difference between someone who's actually empathic, which means that they feel other people's emotions inside themselves, versus someone who's a false martyr or a people pleaser. And on a deeper level, feeling someone else's emotions doesn't make me obedient to their demands at all. When I empathize with where someone's coming from, when I feel the emotions that they're going through, that doesn't mean that their assumptions are right or their judgments are right. It doesn't mean that their ethics are right. It doesn't mean that what they want should happen. It doesn't mean that I have to make them happy. None of those things. And empaths don't have a problem with seeing this. I choose with my own free will to make sacrifices for the benefit of victims. So if there's someone who's spoiled, entitled, and they're just upset that they're not perfectly happy all the time getting everything they want, they're upset that everyone else isn't their slave, I'm not going to make them happy. I'm not going to give them what they want because they're not a victim. And if there's someone who's abusing others, I'm not going to try to placate them and play nice just so they like me and so I seem nice. I'm being nice to evil. That means I'm wonderful. No, if you're being nice to evil, you're a henchman of evil. If you're trying to apologize for evil, you are evil's apologist. An empath empathizes with the actual victims, not with the perpetrator. An empath empathizes with the people who are suffering most on earth, not the people who are privileged, not the people who are demanding obedience. And if you haven't learned that, it is a direct result of your lack of curiosity, because it's easy to learn. It only takes a few Google searches to learn all of what I said about empathy. And if you wait in your filter bubble for your own filter bubble to tell you the truth, it never will. It's designed to distract you. If you haven't figured that out yet, you're stuck in it.